I have good news and bad news. The good news is there's a single, easy to implement policy that would stop global warming within a generation without upending the world economy. The bad news is that no one is even talking about it. This is the carbon take-back obligation, requiring importers and extractors of fossil fuels to dispose of the carbon dioxide generated by both their activities and, crucially, the products they sell. I don't care how the industry gets rid of carbon dioxide or where they get it from. They could start by capturing it from their own refineries and move on to recapture it out of thin air. But they must dispose of it safely, permanently, and stop just dumping it into the atmosphere. This is entirely possible, but we have to start now. To have any hope of reaching net zero by 2050, which means capturing and storing 1 ton of carbon dioxide for every ton generated by any continued fossil fuel use, we must be at 10% storage by 2030. That would add about 10% to the price of oil. So there you have it, one policy imposed on a single industry that solves the climate problem. I'm Myles Allen, Director of Oxford Net Zero at the University of Oxford, and this was my big little talk.
2021 has been an inflection point in the fight against climate change. The United States rejoined the Paris Agreement, and more governments, policymakers, businesses, and individuals are taking a hard look at the impact they're having on our planet. Even so, it's still not enough. While this might sound obvious, climate change is too complex and important of an issue to tackle alone. Companies big and small are increasingly seeing the power of collaborating and learning from others. And that's why the Climate Pledge, which was co-founded by Amazon and Global Optimism, is encouraging organizations and governments to reduce their carbon emissions and become net zero carbon by 2040, 10 years ahead of the Paris Agreement. The pledge is bringing together organizations that are prepared to run the furthest, the fastest together, and ultimately to act now. So far, more than 100 of the world's leading companies across a range of industries are standing up and saying, enough is enough. And we're only getting started. Addressing climate change can also deliver economic gains, trillions of dollars in economic benefits, and millions of low-carbon jobs. Progress won't be linear, and there will be challenges along the way. But we see no other choice if we're to tackle the climate crisis in a timeline that's consistent with the latest science. The time is not tomorrow, the time is now. And you can join us by signing the Climate Pledge. I'm Sally Fouts, I'm the director of the Climate Pledge, and this was my big little talk.
The planet doesn't care how we make a ton of CO2 disappear. The planet only cares that it goes away. That's why offsetting carbon emissions in one place with carbon reduction somewhere else deserves another look. I'm not talking about forestry projects you can't measure or plugging methane leaks that shouldn't even exist. I'm talking about a tool that can make sure a ton of carbon you paid offset is a ton of carbon reduced. The tool's been sitting under our noses for decades. It's the tightly regulated cap and trade markets like Carbon Reggie. Buy permits from one of those markets equivalent to the tons of CO2 your business or portfolio emits, then lock them up. As far as the planet is concerned, you've made that amount of CO2 go away. But why stop there? Why not convert the value of those permits into funding for negative emissions technologies that actually remove CO2 from the planet's atmosphere? All of that is what a nonprofit called Climate Vault is doing. I'm Michael Greenstone, founder of Climate Vault, and that was my big little talk.